Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Reconnect with Yourself, Fueling Innovation and Achieving Goals. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant here at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those who don't know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. So, as you will see in the chat in a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So, definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And second, we are going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please make sure to submit your questions for us in that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation, and we will try our best to get to all of them. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Wells Fargo, the Narit Foundation, Walmart.org, JP Morgan Chase, BPM, HubSpot for Startups, and Google Cloud. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to launch just a couple polls to step back, see how everyone in the room is doing today. This first one is going to ask, how are you feeling about your business? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? And we'll give it just a few moments here for folks to respond. Thank you, thank you. All right, I'll give it one more moment. Awesome. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share these results. All right, looks like optimism coming up in the lead. Always great to see, but definitely have some feelings of anxiety and surviving. So hopefully this shows you that whatever you're feeling, you are not alone. And I'm very confident that our conversation today may help alleviate some of those feelings as well. So I am going to stop sharing this poll and launch the second one. What is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving. And this one just helps us understand your current needs as an entrepreneur so we can ensure the programs and resources we're developing are continue to be valuable for all of you. So I'll give this just a couple moments. Awesome. We got folks from DC, Virginia, Wisconsin. Welcome, welcome. Great to have you dialing in from all over. All right, I'll give it one more moment. Awesome. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share these results. All right, finance and sales coming up neck and neck in the lead, and then marketing close behind. We got some pivot and team in there. Awesome. Thank you all so much for participating. I'm going to stop sharing that poll, and without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to our special guest, Sonia Satra, CEO of Modisize. Sonia, it's such a pleasure to have you here with us today. Super excited for this conversation, as I know it's much needed for so many entrepreneurs. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. My pleasure. Excited to be here.
Wonderful. Well, before we jump right in, I'd love to hear just from your own words, just maybe a minute on who you are and what's kind of brought you to this, work that we're about to talk about in terms of reconnecting with yourself.
Yeah, so I think I've had many lives. It feels like not quite nine yet, but in my former life, still sometimes life, I was an actress, best known as Lucy Cooper Spalding on Guiding Light and Psycho Nurse Barbara on One Life to Live. Not psycho, I promise. But it was through acting actually that I really developed my passion for mindset because you get rejected a lot in that business. And I certainly went through a lot of ups and downs. And through it all, I really learned a lot about mindset. How can I stay strong? How can I pick myself back up every time I fell? And how could I thrive in a really incredibly competitive industry? And so I did love mindset, was studied it intensely, everything. I was a bit of a Tony Robbins junkie. I did the forum, I did heart math, I even did hypnosis so I could self-hypnotize myself. uh any and everything I could get my hands on, I dug deep into. And then I became pregnant with my daughter, and during that time I thought, maybe I'll get a coaching certification. People would often ask me questions, and I had had a coach even before people knew what a coach was, and I thought it had been so helpful, so I thought maybe I could learn a few things that could be helpful. And I really loved it. And I started to coach individuals, and I found that I had such a passion for helping people live their dreams. I had sort of lived mine, and now it was an opportunity for me to actually take everything I had learned and share it with others. And so I sort of went down the path of coaching and speaking. And through all of that, I created also Motosize, which really was an intersection or a combination of movement and mindset. It was something, and I could share a story maybe down the road, but I had used, never intending to do it, but during my acting, it was a period of imposter syndrome, and it actually had really turned my life around then. And now, when I was with kids and I was suddenly realizing, I needed to somehow work out and do mindset and do everything else as a mom, it came to me as this idea. And then there was a lot of brain science behind what happens when you move, how it really changes your brain, rewires your brain, makes you more creative, helps you with decision making, gives you more confidence and more motivation, changes your mood, helps you learn. I mean, it's really incredible. And so, sort of harnessing the power of movement while integrating a coaching process around a specific goal became Motosize.
Wonderful.
So,
Oh, what a journey. I love
yeah.
you mentioned something kind of towards the beginning of, as you're kind of like discovering this world of coaching in terms of you looking to figure out a way to thrive in a competitive environment. And I know that that's something that all of us in the audience as business owners or founders are navigating. And whether you're a first-time founder, maybe you've had a business before, impatience and self-doubt are feelings that can arise, depending on where you are in the journey and what you're dealing with, for whether it's fundraising, gaining customers, whatever it may be. And so how can, from this experience and your perspective, how do you think entrepreneurs might begin to recognize when self-doubt is clouding judgment, and what steps they can take to maintain confidence in their strategy during, slow or challenging periods?
Right. It's funny. I was reading out that question to my husband, who's also an entrepreneur, and he's like, don't entrepreneurs always get clouded with judgment? Like, with self-doubt, because self-doubt I think is so prevalent. And I did. I mean, I learned that when I headed to Hollywood to become a star, right? It all seemed fun and games. And then I realized, oh, this isn't a business too. It really was an entrepreneurial business, much like it is now. And I think self doubt is a huge part of that journey that you do have to navigate. And often it's not like something I think that suddenly goes away when you make it to some certain level. It will always sort of come in. So I think one of the first things is your emotions. Your emotions are really a key to how you're feeling. And I I always say you feel what you focus on. So
Yeah.
if you are focusing on self-doubt or fear or any number of perhaps more negative emotions or less helpful emotions, you're going to feel that. And so I think that's a really great place to start. And to really understand that that's the sign. And then you can start to look at, okay, what are the triggers? What's coming up for me? What might be happening? Then looking at the evidence, is it really true, these things that you're kind of making up in your head, or these feelings that you have, or is this just a repetitive pattern? Because we often have patterns. I think uh, when we have fear or doubt, many of us, well, it starts to tap the lower part of your brain, right? So it kicks in that fight, flight, fright. And many of us have our key thing. My husband will get into fight. He's ready to get angry about anything, And for me, I think it was much more of a freeze or a fright, And so when you start to notice those reactions, that can also start to be a neon light of, okay, what's really going on here? And let's shift. And that's a really big piece, because often we try to make decisions, or we try to take our next steps from that place. We'll come up with our list of options from a place of being scared or doubtful or angry, and it's not the most resourceful place. So I'm a real huge proponent. It's one of the reasons why exercise can actually help, because it will shift your state, your physical state, your mental and your emotional state. And from a more empowered place, you can make a more empowered decision. And so I think it's noticing what you're feeling, noticing what's going on, taking a look at the real evidence, and then how can you shift into a more empowered state, and from that place make the decision.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I know it can be really when you are in the busy routine of leading a business, you kind of move through things quickly and decisions can be made quickly. And sometimes there are conflicting forces. And so it can be difficult to make those decisions. But I love this idea of like kind of taking a pause and really evaluating like what is true here, what really serves me and my business. And so that's wonderful. And I think, in these feelings of self-doubt, sometimes this idea of, an urge to pivot, when you don't see immediate results can come up. And so for, for a pivot specifically, or, if you're kind of looking to change the course of what you're doing, how can entrepreneurs determine if that's genuinely necessary or if it's maybe a reaction to self-doubt? And are there signs maybe that would suggest that staying the course is the best move?
Yeah, so I think a pivot is definitely a bigger move, right? Than a smaller, is my self-doubt clouding my judgment on a decision, right? A pivot is a pretty big decision. And so I do think stepping back, being a little more objective to it. A question that can sometimes help that is, if I were to start today, would I do exactly what I'm doing now, or would I do it differently? Because sometimes that could also sort of open up at least the conversation of, if I would choose to do what I'm doing today, then perhaps you should stay the course. And, if you would do something differently, what is that difference? And how might you do it differently? And why would you do it differently? And that might help inform it as well. And I think with pivots too, I think it's also very helpful if it's possible to perhaps test it. Maybe it's a poll, maybe it's reaching out to your customers, your clients, and seeing what is it that they need, what do they want, are you on track, are you on target, or are you making this up in your head and you're ready to change when really you need to stick with it.
Yeah.
Or is there a small thing that you can do to test it? Maybe it's, offer something that's in alignment with what you might do to pivot, or maybe you try a different target audience, or, if you have that capability of being able to do like a test of what it is that you might focus, that could also be a strategic way. I
Yeah.
also think if you're looking to do a big pivot, it is helpful to have a little bit of advice and to help have either a group or a coach or a mentor, but
Yeah.
somebody that can help you to step back into that objective view, almost take that bird's eye view, or almost imagining, you're in the helicopter taking a look down. What do you see? What do you notice? What is working? What's not working? Is there something you've been thinking about doing but not doing that
Mhm.
you could execute on that would actually help you stay the course more efficiently or more effectively?
Mhm.
Or and I like the bird's eye view actually very much. So I do a perspectives exercise with clients a lot, and it's a way to get them out of their current perspective, which is usually doubt or fear. And usually the first three or four they know, and then you kind of challenge them to do three or four others. And a bird's eye is often one that I'll do. So it's not coming up with options, it's just looking through different lenses, different points of view on it, and a bird's eye perspective. Because sometimes you're looking down and you're like, oh, that person's just running around doing a whole bunch of stuff that aren't really, it's not really adding up to what they do. They could be more efficient, they could be more effective, they could be targeting their energy on actions that would actually go further. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that
Yeah,
would be what I would advise.
absolutely. Absolutely. I love this idea, continuing to stay connected with your customers, with stakeholders, and leaning on the support of mentors, advisors, coaches. There are people dedicated to doing that work to support you as the business owner. And there are people out there with aligned experience to help you with those challenges. But yeah, continuing to talk to your customers and really ensure that this is what they need is such a great, just indicator, of the next choice that you should make in terms of product, service, business development, whatever it may be. So that's wonderful. And,
And
I think,
again, I think
yeah,
it helps to start to shift, because when we're in a very high emotional state, it's not always the best place to make those decisions. So some of these things, whether it be a physical change, or whether it be a conversation with a client, or with a mentor or a stakeholder or somebody, all of those things are actually changing your physical state, and that helps change your mindset, which helps make stronger decisions. It actually goes on a different nervous system track.
right,
And
right.
so we will tap a different part of our intuitive self and our, what I often call, body intelligence. And that all leads to, I think, better decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs can see, and both in their work life and their personal life. That's something that can kind of affect their daily decisions. But it seems like a lot of these feelings, and you mentioned, when you were talking about your story, this idea of imposter syndrome. I know it's so common with entrepreneurs. In our community, we hear about that kind of experience all the time, and trying to struggling to break out of it, and the pressure to make progress quickly can often lead to entrepreneurs to question their capabilities, and create that imposter syndrome. So what do you think are some practical ways that early stage entrepreneurs can combat imposter syndrome, especially when things aren't going as planned?
Mm. Well, I think it's interesting, and I think imposter syndrome is also one of those things. There's a lot of, research that shows even as people progress and they go further down the track, like, and they up level, they still have imposter syndrome. Every time it's like you change, you have those doubts. So again, it's just being aware of it, right? Knowing that that's there, it's normal, it's okay, and then what can you do? And for me, so. I had actually just I had been on Guiding Light as Lucy Cooper, and I had worked on that, and I could have stayed on it. It was a really amazing experience. I had an incredible storyline, but I had thought, oh, a little part of me, if I'm ever going to play a different character, I probably need to leave this really nice, comfortable, cushy job and go back to being rejected. And that was when I left. Now I had way more experience. I had hit my 10,000 hours of experience. I had a better agent. I had a strong manager. I was really set up to take it to the next level. And that was when the imposter syndrome hit hard. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to work again. That was a fluke. Everyone's going to figure out I don't know how to do this. And it really permeated every area of my life, my health, my work. I went into auditions as if I wasn't going to get it. And I just kept imagining, like, I'm going to be broke. I'm never going to work. I mean, the whole 9 yards, all of it. I took that one on. And after a year and a half, I did not work one single day. Uh, in fact, I was turtle sitting to make money, very glamorous, only in Hollywood. But I was up on this bluff and I was, kind of overlooking the ocean. I was like, how did I get here? And it was in that moment I had one of those ahas of I was using the same mindset tools to create that I had used to create success to now create failure. When I
Mm.
first started, I was envisioning success. I was envisioning being on TV, of making it. Now I was envisioning not making it, not getting a job. And here I was asking powerful questions. And I think powerful questions is a really, really great tool. But here would be, who could I reach out to? What could I do next? Here I was like, why won't anyone hire me? Or why can't I do this?
Yeah.
And the self-talk, the all of that. And while I was taking action, the results were a direct correlation with the mindset that I had. So it was a really powerful change. And it was actually when I decided I got to turn this around and fast, and I'm going to get in shape and I'm going to change my mindset. And so I started to run and ask different questions, like who could I reach out to? What could I do today? Envisioning that success, doing affirmations. And I would do this up and down this canyon. And even from the top of the canyon, I realized whatever I yelled would echo back. And so I would yell out, you got the job. And I'd hear back, you got the job.
Oh, I love it.
I cheer and I like embody that new success as if. Um, and after not working for a year and a half, 2 weeks later, I booked a national commercial, and 2 months later, running down that track, I got a call for One Life to Live. So it made a massive difference, and it was a huge aha of the power of imposter syndrome, and B, the power we have to change it.
Yeah.
And so I I say questions because our brains are kind of like Google. What you ask, it will answer. And so if you ask good questions like, who could I reach out to? What could I do? What evidence do I have this is working? Or what evidence do I have that it's not working? If you start asking those kinds of questions, you'll answer that. If you ask, like, why can't I make this work? Why is everything always falling apart? Why am I not doing, like, why can't I sell this? Why can't I sell might be that might not be a terrible question. There might be a better way to phrase it, but it starts to go into then you start taking it on as yourself, like, and you start imploding, and that whole negative mindset accumulates. You can start embodying that, and again, that will lead to less success. So I think asking different questions that are more helpful and that can direct you or redirect you into the path that you want to go can really help. And, I am a believer of visioning. I do think like getting back on track, because sometimes we lose sight of that. We start with it. We're very clear on our vision, our why, what we want, how we're going to get there. And then it all becomes this big convoluted mess. And so, sort of bringing back that clarity can really help get you back on that path as well.
Yeah. Ah, what a powerful story. And, I think that's something that'll, a lot of folks can, relate to, whether it's with their business or something else that they've experienced in life of just, the way that your mindset can really dictate what happens and the opportunities that, you find, and that come to you. And so what an amazing story. And I think as we're thinking about these feelings, I want to just pause for a moment because you have a seven step framework, and it kind of grows alongside the entrepreneur as they and their business are growing. And so could you maybe walk us through this framework and how it can help entrepreneurs maintain a balanced approach to both business and personal well-being?
Yeah, of course. So it was a seven-step process that I created, and in a perfect world, it would be matched with some form of movement. In the motor-sized world, it can be done with sort of aerobics that I match the mindset with the movement. So, like, if you're pulling something in, you're literally like maybe doing a bicep curl, or but it can also be done just running, walking, a treadmill, elliptical, whatever, swimming. I've had people do all of it, but there is something powerful to the movement. Just because we do know now that when you move, there is a protein that's released called BDNF that actually stimulates brain growth. And when you connect it with an emotion, positive emotion, it can actually start to create new neural pathways. So we can rewire our brain, and that is the idea behind it. And so, in addition to all the good feelings, with that said, you can perfectly do it without movement. I just recommend it with a movement. So, maybe are you willing to be a little guinea pig? Would you go through
Sure,
it?
sure.
Cool. So, it starts with a goal that you might want to achieve. And I sometimes ask, if you don't know, what I call my $1 million question. What if it were easy? What would you do? And I say $1 million. I'll just share a quick story about my husband. He also was in entertainment, and he had what they call a first look deal. So he was basically paid to come up with ideas for shows, and had been great. All was going well. It was the end of the contract. They called him out. He figured he was going out there to resign. We all went out. I just had my daughter, so brand new baby, and get out there. I'm sitting in the car. He comes out looking white as a ghost. I'm like, "What happened?" And he's like, "I got fired." I was like, "Okay, that's okay. We'll figure it out." And he starts to implode. Like, what are we gonna do? It's a disaster. Just got a new baby, and I was like, it's okay. I'll go back. I can work. You could do this. Lots of different options, right? That's what we often do. Go into options. And no, 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 I can't do it. I'm like, well, you can. And for some reason, he had this idea that if we had $1 million, everything was going to be okay. Sure would have helped, but it was an obsession of his, this $1 million. And so he's like, I don't know, nobody can make $1 million in this business. Like, clearly somebody in the entertainment business has made $1 million.
Mhm.
You can't do. No, it's impossible. And finally, it just blurted out of my mouth, like, well, what if it were easy? What would you do? And he's like, it's not easy, you know that. I'm like, yeah, but what if it were easy? What would you do? And at that moment, he stopped and paused, and he's like, I don't know. I guess if it were easy, I'd start my own company. And this had not been any of the options that had ever been explored. And so suddenly, talk about a pivot, was like, okay, well, let's look at that. And so we start to go down that road. Next day, called up a friend. They formed an LLC. They started a business. 1 year later, he made $1 million. And so I sometimes get a little flack for that's not easy. I appreciate that. I get it. It's not about it being easy or pretending that it's easy. It's about opening up your mindset to what if it were easy? What would you do? So, is there a goal or within a goal that you might have? What if it were easy? What would you do?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, I'm studying for the CFA, so I'd love to get my CFA, but it's a multi-step process, so we're still at the beginnings.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. That's so cool. So let's just use it. Let's go with your CFA. It is a multi-step process, right? But so just for a moment, just imagine, and maybe you could share with us, what would that vision look like if you could step into the future of already having that CFA? What would that look like? What would it feel like?
Yeah, I think it would feel I would feel accomplished. I would feel like my perspectives on the world are broadened. I'm a learner at heart, and so I love just, gaining knowledge that would, help me in the current position that I work to serve business owners. And I can imagine being in a position where I kind of have the knowledge and the tools to do that work and really make an impact and feel that impact.
Nice. It's so interesting. It was nice to see, even like the more you spoke about it, like I could almost feel your confidence and you just sort of got rooted in like, yeah, I would be able to do that and I know it.
Yes.
And just imagine like the people that are around you and how are they responding to you when you're in that space?
Yeah. Oh, so interesting. Well, I think my wife would be very proud. I
Yeah.
think my dad would be proud. It would be wonderful to, share that experience of passing the test, and celebrating with friends and family. That would be a big milestone. And so yeah, and it's always better to share accomplishments with those that, loved ones, whether they're friends, family. So I
Yeah.
think it would be really inspiring and reassuring in the path that I had chosen.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. We could go on. That's the one to actually really expand upon, but in the interest of time, we'll keep moving because the more that flushes out, the more rich that is, the more connected you get. And as we saw, even your body language shifted in that, like, yes, that confidence. And that's awesome. That's what we want to start to see. And so what do you have? Right now, stepping back into your current situation, what do you have to make that happen? What do you already have? Because so often when we come to goals, we have the laundry list of all the things we don't have. Right.
Right.
And again, it puts us into this position of maybe feeling lack or imposter like, or something that we're not quite ready for. But we have so much. We have
Mhm.
so much already. And it's so important to take a look at that. So, what do you have to make
Yeah.
this goal happen?
Yeah, I mean, I look to myself, I have my own kind of like project management skills, how am I gonna like, there's a lot of things that I need to get done. How am I gonna get it all actually done in the time that I need to? So there's that piece of it, but then there's the external piece of, I need the
Well, you're
resources.
going into need. See, this
Okay.
is what we always do. We always skip, what do you have? And it's always like, oh my God, I need this. Like, I don't have it. I'm like in lack. Right.
Mm,
And that already puts us in a position where we feel a little less than, and
yeah,
we want to stay. So it's automatic. We so often do it. And so we're going to get there. I promise we're going to give you a chance to express that. But I want to back you up for 1 second and
yeah.
take a moment. What do you already have to make this goal a success?
Yeah. Yeah. I have, the study materials.
Yeah.
I have the time. I have the motivation. Um, we're at the beginning.
It's so interesting though. It's like, oh my God, I don't have anything, but you do. Keep going. I'm going to press you just a little
I
further on
have
this because
support
you've
from,
scraped the surface of what you
right?
have.
Yeah, no, I have support from my friends and family. Um, you know, I have, free resources and people online that, can help and support. So and communities that, I could join for support. So
What other skills do you have? It's
I have reflection. I have
nice.
um I have determination.
Probably have a couple study skills. You did
Yeah, I
mention
have my
project
study skills,
management. You do have
100%.
some.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
guessing you have a pretty good intelligence since you're already in the CFA program, right? You have some,
Yeah.
skill sets probably
Yeah,
from
yeah, I
prior
have a
education.
baseline. Yeah, baseline
Hmm.
experience in education to, set me up for at a foundational level. So, yeah, and I have the study skills. I have, the study tricks. So yeah, yeah, I mean, technically, and I have the technology as well to support.
Right. Amazing. Okay. See, it's so funny how hard that is for many of us, right?
Yeah,
And yet, once you look at what you have, you're like, okay, well, I actually do have a good amount. Doesn't take away from the fact that you still have to do some other things with it, but you
right.
have it. And that's what we want to build on. Well, all right, so you've got that. All right, now you can throw in what do you need?
Well, I need to save money for the registration fees. I, would love a tutor for some of the study materials. I'd love more time. I'd
All
love
right,
more
but
options.
those are interesting things. So even like a tutor, like you do know a lot of people, right? You have a pretty credible, probably connection base. So you might be able to look at tutor and you might be able to look at the resources you already have. And perhaps, I'm not saying that there is, but perhaps there is something in there. And I
Yeah.
think that is often what happens when people ask, what do you have? It's like when you start looking at who do you know? Who do you know who knows people? Like, what options do you already have access to? You might have some of it already there, you know?
Yeah.
And often that will kickstart us. I did done it with myself. I've done it with other people. When they start looking at what they have, they're like, "Oh, wait a second, I know somebody." It's like, "Oh, really? You want to get in there and you know somebody, but where they came in earlier, they're like, oh my God, I need this and I need all of this. And it's like they had it right in front of them. And it
Yeah.
happens way more often than you think. And sometimes it seems really obvious, but how often do we miss what is right in front of us, the most obvious things?
Mhm.
So it's such an important step of what do you have? Look at what you have first. Then you can go to what do you need? And you'll see often you'll have the answers within that, or then you can go figure out what do you need and how do you go get it.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I think this is
so
interesting.
yeah, I was so well, we're almost there. What's stopping you?
What is stopping me? The busyness of life, self-doubt, of course. Um, eh, those are definitely the main triggers. There's things that I want to do more than study. Um,
Right?
there's things that I need to do, more immediately sometimes than study. Um, and so yeah, it takes me longer than I hope a lot of times. Sometimes think the study material is certain chapters are harder than am expecting, so it takes me longer to get through, and then I don't get through as much in the allotted time I have. So that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. So you can see what's stopping you. And there are, once you sort of list those out, you can find little workarounds to them, right? The self-doubt,
Yeah.
we can chip away at that. These other things you could chip away about. Sometimes they're just stories that we tell ourselves, and those we can just burn.
Right.
And I will literally do imaginary, like, let's just burn those and replace it. Like, I don't have time. Well, you're gonna make the time, right?
Yeah.
So you can repeat that over and over in your head, and it will make you feel tired and stressed and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, you're gonna figure it out. So maybe it's not worth the time that you spend worrying about the time.
Right.
And again, right? Okay, what can I do to make the time? How can you change the question, right? Of like, what's one thing I can do to give myself the necessary time today? And then you'll go find that. And the
Yeah.
rest you can kind of burn. So, what's one action you might be able to take to move you along in a productive, efficient, and maybe even happy way this week?
Yeah. Yeah,
One
I could,
thing.
something I've been trying to implement into my life is non-negotiable self-care. So in the same regard, this is, or, just if I have a goal set for myself, kind of making it a non-negotiable to some degree. So, I'm going to study for 1 hour every day, non-negotiable, like 1 hour
Awesome.
every day. That's for studying, that kind of thing.
Perfect. And so if you could schedule that in, then
Yeah.
that becomes that, right? Because otherwise it's a hope.
Right.
Right. And we know this too. So, right, putting it into the calendar will make it happen. I'll just throw in a little extra if you want to really make self-care a non-negotiable, adding maybe even if it's 15, 20 minutes of some form of movement before you study will actually make you more focused. It helps you learn and it will help you feel more energized and more motivated. So it might actually make your study time even more effective.
Hmm.
So if
Oh,
you're going to make that a non negotiable, I would throw that into the mix and
yeah.
time it as best as you can and experiment. You'll see. Because when people start to play with it and move the exercise before an important activity, they're like, it's just crazy how much better I was at it. And so the time you might have wasted will, or quote unquote, we waste, it's never wasted time if you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
But our perception of I don't have time to work out, if you just do 15, 20 minutes, go run around the block, go, I don't know, do some calisthenics, some yoga, ride a bike, whatever it is that you like to do. It doesn't matter. But as long as you're moving your body and raising your heart rate, it will actually make you more productive.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That was such definitely a challenging exercise, and I think so relevant to business owners, everyone, first of all, we have members of our immersive programs that are working towards specific milestones, and so they can kind of do this reflective activity, what do I
Yeah.
have available to me like with my business right now? What support do I have? What tools and resources do I have? What do I need? What do I not have? That kind of thing, and start to like really make an action plan. Like, and then I love this question of like really pausing to ask, like, what is holding you back?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I think it can be easy to be like, okay, what do I have? What do I need? What do I need to do? And you kind of skip that part of like what's holding you back. And I feel like that can be really revealing in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, you know, the right course of action that you might take from there. So what a wonderful exercise. And I think this can be relevant to business owners across, different business stages and regardless of industry. So really wonderful. And
Yeah.
yeah, go. Do you want
No,
to
I
add?
was just going to say, I just want to add the order of those three questions is really key. And I really do recommend the visioning in the beginning too, because I think it does set you up to sort of like have that vision or reconnect to your why. But you got to ask, what do you have first? because
Mhm.
most people will go into what do you need and then what's stopping you and then like, oh, what do I have? But by that point, so far down the road, you're not really looking at what you have as well. And it's hard. We have to retrain ourselves to look at what we do have, but it's it's eye opening. And then to your point, yeah, when you sort of call out the pink elephant in the room, it becomes easier to deal with it. So.
100%. And I think this is such an important conversation because entrepreneurs, in this busyness of life, can often overlook self-care. And in the example that we kind of went through, something that came up just happened to come up as, there's not enough time. We always hear from entrepreneurs like time management is such a challenge, and really just finding the time to do these kinds of self-care activities, and sometimes they can be seen as secondary or other than like different from business tasks. And so how can prioritizing self-care actually enhance and drive innovation? And you started talking a little bit about kind of like the brain function that actually goes on, and the way that some of these actions can really trigger changes in the way that your brain manifests productivity. And I'm wondering if you can just share any examples of, a routine that can really, work within the busy entrepreneurial lifestyle.
Yeah. So I just want to share just a second of how it all started because it actually John Rady, he's a neuroscientist out of Harvard, and he had heard about this school in Chicago. It's outside of Naperville. And there was a gym teacher there who thought gym isn't really as effective as it should be. Like, the kids who loved gym would be there, and the ones who didn't would figure out how to get out of it. And he really felt he believed so much in physical exercise. So he was always experimenting, and he finally landed lots of experimentation, but he landed on this idea of having every child come in and they had to walk or run to their maximum heart rate. So they'd wear heart rate monitors, they'd come in and do it first thing in the morning. And then they also integrated some exercise throughout the day. And at the end of the year, this school district had 3% obesity rate, which is significantly less than the national norm. But what really sparked the interest was they also were engaged in this international science math test. And notoriously, the Asian countries do really, really well. The American schools usually don't even place in the top 10. This school district placed number one in science and six in math. It never
Wow.
happened before in the United States. And so he had heard about this. He's like, what are they doing at this school that's so different? And so we started to go in. And the only thing that they really saw that was majorly different was this exercise. So that was when he started to do experiments and explore, well, what is happening when we exercise. So that's when they started to examine the brain and what's happening. And that's when they really discovered how much is actually happening in your brain. We always think of it as the endorphin high, like, oh, we're going to fit into nice size jeans, like, right? And that makes it easier to push aside. But when you realize every single function in your body is being impacted by movement, particularly your brain and your creativity, your focus, your ability to learn, all of that is elevated at such a higher rate. Suddenly it shifts your perspective of like, okay, wait a second, maybe I need to be doing this just as much as I need to be taking a class, right? Like it's going to make
Yeah.
you better. And
100.
when you understand that's what's happening, it becomes so much more than just, oh, it's a should. It's actually, it's going to make me more creative. I mean, all of the great geniuses of our time would talk about how they would go out for a walk,
Yeah.
or they would do some kind of movement, and then they'd come up with their ideas. How often have you been sitting at your desk trying to come up with, figure something out, and you're like, oh my God, I can't figure it out? You get up, grab something to drink, go take a shower, go do something else, and then you come up with the idea, right?
Ah.
that's not a mistake. That is actually inspired by some of the interaction that's happening in our bodies. So I would say to entrepreneurs, like, how can you make it like a must, not a should? And how can you integrate it? It doesn't have to be an hour boot class, a camp class, or an hour yoga class every day. If you can't fit that into your schedule, 10 minutes a couple times a day can make a difference. You're feeling stuck, get up and do some jumping jacks and sit back down and see. You'll see your brain will be much clearer. Go take a walk around the block, play, I don't know, frisbee or hacky sack with your kid, or anything that will help move things around. I keep a set of weights by my desk in between Zoom calls. I'll like just lift something just to move, or do some sun salutations or walking meetings. I know I was working with a group of entrepreneurs who were at a company, and they got a ping pong table, and they started to play ping pong before every pitch or every really important meeting.
Wow.
And they found it got better because they were having fun and they were moving. And
Wow.
so it there's lots of ways, and I would encourage you to, if you think of it as this is actually going to enhance, this is changing my brain to make me better, then it becomes more of an important thing. And you'll see there are little ways. I even use like a standing desk, for example, right? So in between, I do squats. These little things can add up, and they start to shift not only your well being, and that's a plus, but also your brain.
Yeah. Oh, that's so wonderful. And I love that, it really is something that's accessible to everyone, like no matter what your capacity is, you can find a little bit of time. So many great ideas there and just, I know specifically we have a lot of founders that, are tech based. They may be sitting at a desk for long
All
periods of
day.
the day. And I know me myself, I'm sitting at my desk all day, and when I get up and walk around just for a couple of minutes even, and then I sit back down, it's like my brain starts working again a little bit. So
That's not a mistake. I know so many people have Apple Watches or whatever kind of watches or phones, and they've got the little thing, the reminders, get up, move. It's like actually get up and move when it
it
says
actually helps.
it. Get
Yes.
up and move. If you're at your computer, get up. You can do standing, push-ups against the wall or your desk. You could do little things like that. Sometimes I'll even, I know it's such a silly little thing, but like just lifting yourself up on the chair, like things like that, or lifting your feet off, will engage your core. A little bit goes a really long way. And so, yeah, if you start to think, I just have to engage, it will improve your immune system and it will improve your effectiveness.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. This has been so wonderful. Sonia, I think we have time for maybe
Yeah,
one more question. And
absolutely.
I want to kind of, combine these two a little because they're a little bit related, but the uncertainty of entrepreneurship and it can be overwhelming, especially when, we talked about like there are maybe delays or uncontrollable challenges.
Mhm. Mhm.
And resilience is often the key to overcoming these kinds of navigating these challenging times in entrepreneurship. And so with these tools that we've talked about, how can entrepreneurs, consistently stay grounded and committed to that long-term vision that they've identified for themselves, despite these kind of external challenges, like, that may be out of their control, and just any tips or advice to really cultivate resilience and maintain the stamina needed to achieve those goals and stay the course.
Yeah. Well, I think there is research, there are studies that show the connection between our physical well-being and our resilience as well, right? And how we take care of ourselves, our self-care, which is truly our mind, body, soul. And I, don't want to leave that out to put a little emphasis. I put a lot of emphasis on the movement and the mindset piece, but I do think the soul aspect is key to whatever that means to you, whether it's, prayer or meditation or, spending time in nature. But all of those aspects really do make a difference when we feel strong physically, mentally, emotionally, when we feel whole in those three categories as well, we are more grounded and we can handle the uncertainties so much better. It really is, when our cup is full and a little bit will just like flood it over.
Yes.
Where each time you exercise your body, you give yourself a little bit of time for some of those other things. And I really emphasize in 15 minutes a day, you could walk around the block, write 2 pages of a journal, and maybe take a 5-minute meditation, right? That might take 20 minutes. But all three of those things would really actually make you feel better. I also think it's important, especially in this day and age of technology, where so much is happening online, that it is important also to spend some time with real people. Ideally the people that you love. But I think entrepreneurship it's a whole thing. It's a lifestyle, right? And it can be overwhelming. It can take over our lives. And we can wake up 10 years later and be like, what happened? And I think it is one of the great challenges, and it's one of the great lessons of like we really do need to look at, I call the wheel of life, and I have a wheel literally with 8 different categories, and I'll rate them, on a scale of 0 to 10. And if relationship is 0 and work is 10,
Yeah.
that eventually that's going to probably lead to some issues down the road. And so, can everything be balanced every day? Absolutely not. When things are challenging, you probably do need to pivot your energies towards that. It's just you have to take a look at the whole picture and really remember that there are people, loved ones, family, friends, other things that matter too, and that actually fills you up so that you can be more resilient to handle some of the challenges that are inevitably going to come. And that helps you sustain in the long run. And the last thing I'd say around that too is you have to celebrate the successes. Like even the teeniest tiny little ones. You don't have to wait to graduate to celebrate your success, right? The exams, the wins, the difficult lessons that you figured out that maybe took that extra hour longer, but you did it because it's the journey in entrepreneurship. It's not an end. It's forever, ideally, right? We're going to continue to grow. It's going to last a while. And if you don't take the time to enjoy the journey, you'll burn out. And so I really, really emphasize the, mind, body, soul, looking at the wheel of life and making sure that every category of your life is given some attention in even a week of time or 2 weeks period of time, right? It's again not every day, but in the wholeness of your life. And so you're not spending 10 years burning out and then wondering what happened to everything else.
Oh, Sonia, this has been so wonderful. And if you had just one key takeaway or piece of wisdom that you wanted to leave with the audience, what would that be?
Believe in yourself. I mean, beliefs are really thoughts that you thought over and over and over again. And so when you start to emphasize the belief, I can do this, I can do it, I can do it, you can make that belief just as strong as I can't do it, I don't know how to do it, I'm not good
Oh,
enough, right? And so it's what are we repeating in our daily lives that will make a difference in how we feel and whether we succeed or not. And so You feel what you focus on. And so if you're not feeling good, what are you focusing on and what are you repeating? And shift it and really, really be intentional about emphasizing the beliefs that in yourself that you can do it. Post sticky notes, say it out loud, look at memes, listen to it, feel it. We sometimes roll our eyes at that, like, oh, that's just that woo stuff. And yet sometimes we're like lawyers arguing against ourselves,
Yeah.
like arguing the case for why we're not good enough. Like,
Right.
why? We
Yeah.
could use those same skill sets to argue why we are good enough. And I think it's really important to shift it in that direction.
Amazing. Sonia, thank you so much for taking the time to, speak to the community, share your insights, and just set such an amazing overview. And on
Yeah.
behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone here today, we are just so thankful that you joined us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure. Love the work you're doing. Keep it up.
Wonderful. And to our audience, we would love for you to join us again for upcoming webinars, which you can view using those links that are going to be posted in the chat. And thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.